Good evening, or good morning, I suppose, for those of you still with me out past the hour when good evening stops meaning anything. This is Field Notes, WGRY 91.3 out of Greyford. I'm Edward Hollis. The river's still high tonight. You can hear it from the parking lot if you stand out there, which I did before I came in. Mud everywhere yet. Black flies found me on the walk from the car. So we're all the way into it now, that short stretch where the woods are green but haven't gone dark green, before the leaves thicken up and you can't see into the trees anymore. I want to tell you something tonight that I've never put on the air. Not because it's a secret, because I've never been sure what it was. And I'm a man who likes to be sure before he says a thing out loud. It happened to me. That's the part that makes it hard to tell. Most of what I read you on these nights happened to someone else, and there's a kind of safety in that for a folklorist. You hold the story at arm's length. You write down who told it to you and when, and you let it be theirs. This one's mine, so I can't hold it at arm's length. I've tried for years. It doesn't reach. I'll tell it the way I'd write it up, because that's the only way I know how to tell anything anymore. Date, place, conditions. Then what happened. Then the part where I admit what I don't know, which is most of it. This was a long time ago now. I won't tell you exactly how long. It doesn't change the story. And I find the older I get, the less I trust a man who's too precise about a thing that happened to him in the dark. I'll say it was early in my time here. Early enough that I still thought the woods were just woods. I'd been collecting up in Holloway, kitchen table work, the kind I still do, and a man up there had told me about the old logging roads in the Marrow, the ones that don't go where the map says. And I, being young and being from somewhere else, thought that sounded like a fine thing to go and see for myself. You learn eventually not to go and see for yourself. But that's a thing you learn. Nobody's born knowing it. The people who are born here, up in Holloway, up in Drystone, they don't go and see. They were raised by people who didn't go and see, who were raised by people who didn't. It's not knowledge exactly. It's closer to the way you don't put your hand on a hot stove. You don't decide. You just don't. I hadn't been raised by anybody who knew about the stove. So, late afternoon, this time of year, near enough, spring, the ground still soft, the flies out. I parked where the fire road meets the highway, and I walked in. I want to be fair to myself. I wasn't a fool about it. I had light left. I knew the road. I'd been on it before in daytime. I'd told somebody where I was going and when I'd be back. I did the sensible things. I want you to understand that the sensible things were done because of how little they ended up mattering. The Marrow in the late day is a beautiful place. I'll say that plainly because I think people who tell these stories leave it out. And leaving it out is a kind of lie. The light comes in low and green through the new leaves, and the whole forest floor goes gold, and the river's loud off to your left the whole way, running high like it's running now. It is not a frightening place to walk into. That's the trouble with it. Nothing about it tells you to turn around. It lets you come. The first thing I'll tell you I explained away, and I'd explain it away again tonight if it stood alone, so I'll give it to you the way I had it then, as nothing. The road forked where I didn't remember a fork. Now, I've said the roads in the Marrow aren't always the same roads, and you'll hear me say it again on other nights, because it's the truest thing I know about this place and the one I can least account for. But that afternoon I didn't know it yet, so when the road forked, I did what a reasonable man does. I thought, I misremembered. I thought, it's been a while. I came in tired last time. There was always a fork here and I forgot it. The mind is very good at this. The mind would rather rebuild the whole world than admit the world moved. I took the fork that felt right. They always feel right. That's not the road being kind. That's the road knowing which one you'll take. And it was fine. That's what I need you to understand about the first hour. It was fine. The road went on, the light came down. I saw a place where the deer had been at the new growth. I saw a stone wall. I'll talk about the walls another night. I haven't the heart for them tonight. And I went on, and it was fine. And that is exactly how far in you get before any of it starts. You get all the way in. You get to where turning back is the same distance as going on. And then I heard my name. From off in the trees, to the right, where I hadn't come from and wasn't going. Not far. That's the thing I come back to. It wasn't far off, the way a thing is far when you could be mistaken about it. It was close enough that I should have been able to see who it was. And I couldn't. The leaves weren't thick yet. It was that same open green I told you about. You could see a good way into the trees. And there was no one there. And my name came again. I want to be careful here because this is the part where I most want to make it more than it was. And I won't. It said my name. It didn't say anything else. It wasn't a moan or a wail or any of the things you'd put in a story. It was just my name. The way someone says it when they're looking for you and they're not worried yet. When they think you've only wandered off a little. Patient. Almost, and I've turned this word over for years and I haven't found a better one, almost fond. It sounded like someone I knew. That's the whole of it, and that's everything. It sounded like someone I knew, not like a stranger doing an impression, not close to a voice I knew. It was the voice. It had there's a thing a voice does that's under the words, the shape a particular person's mouth makes around your name because they've said it 10,000 times. And it had that. It had the part you couldn't fake because you'd have to have loved someone to know it was there to fake. And I knew, not with my mind was still building forks and explaining things. I knew the way you know a hot stove, the way I hadn't been raised to know but found out I knew anyway, standing there. That is not who it sounds like. Whoever is saying my name in that voice, it is not them. And if I answer, if I go toward it, I will not come back out of these woods. I didn't answer. I want to tell you that was easy, that the rule was already in me and I followed it. But I hadn't been given the rule yet. That came later, from an old man in a kitchen. Don't answer if something calls your name from the woods, not unless you can see who's calling. I'd hear that years after. That afternoon, I didn't have the rule. I had only the thing the rule is made out of, which is the part of you older than your name, the part that knew about the stove before there were stoves. It said, don't answer, don't go. And against it, and this is what I've never said on the air, this is the thing, against it was every other part of me. Every part with a name and a history, and all of those parts wanted to answer, because it sounded like someone I knew. Because when someone you know is calling you, patient, almost fond, from a little way off in the trees, every decent thing in you wants to call back, I'm here. That's not weakness. That's the whole of what makes a person a person. The wanting to answer when you're called. I kept walking, and I did not call back to the voice of someone I knew. I have done some hard things. I don't know that I've done a harder one. I want to be honest about why I kept on, because it wasn't courage. It was the opposite. It was the reasonable part of me still running the show, saying, "You're on your road. The road out is ahead. You keep to your road, and you do not go off it toward a voice in the trees." And that much was right. Keeping to the road was right. I just didn't understand yet that keeping to the road and getting away were not the same thing. Because it called again off to the right, and it was nearer, and I was farther. I'd been walking away from it the whole time. I'd put trees and minutes between us, and it had closed them like they weren't there. That was the first thing that was truly wrong. A person calling after you falls behind when you walk on. This didn't fall behind. It kept its place beside me, off in the trees to the right, the way the river kept its place off to the left, like it was something the road simply ran alongside now. And as I went on, it started to, I want to say, spend itself. You know how a word goes strange if you say it too many times, comes apart into just a sound? It was saying my name like that. The first time it had been a person calling me. Now it was something that had heard a person call me once and was doing it, working the shape of it, getting it very slightly wrong in a way that got worse the longer I walked. A little too even, then a little too slow, then stretched. The back half of my name pulled longer than a mouth would pull it. And the fondness stayed in. That's the part I can't get out from under. The fondness stayed in, while everything that could hold the fondness came apart, so that the farther I walked, the more it was warmth coming out of something that had no business being warm. My name said lovingly, off in the trees, keeping pace, by a thing that wasn't troubling anymore to pretend it had a throat to say it with. I kept my eyes on the road, and I did not look right. I want to tell you that was wisdom. It wasn't. I didn't look because some part of me knew that if I looked and there was nothing there, or worse, if there was, I would stop being able to keep walking, and walking was the only thing I had. So I gave it nothing. I didn't look. I didn't answer. I didn't slow. I made myself a man walking a road and nothing else. No part of me reaching back toward the voice. And I held that the way you hold your breath underwater, past where it hurts, because the surface is still too far. And then it wasn't beside me. I can't tell you when it stopped, the way I can't tell you when a sound you'd stopped noticing actually ended. There was just a point where I understood the trees to my right were only trees, and the river was the only thing keeping pace. And my name was mine again, nobody saying it. I kept on the way I'd been going, not running. I had enough left in me to know that running in those woods toward dark is its own way of answering. And the road brought me out where it should have, and it did not fork again, which I have also thought about, because if it could put a fork where it wanted me, it could have kept me, and it didn't. I've never known what to make of that. Maybe not answering was the whole of it. Maybe once you don't answer, there's nothing more it can do that day. Maybe I just don't understand the rules, which is the likeliest thing, and the one I've made my peace with least. I came out at the highway with the light nearly gone. My car was where I left it. Everything was where I left it. That's the other thing nobody puts in the stories, that afterward, the world is so ordinary, it insults you. I've thought about that afternoon for more years than most of you have been alive, probably. I'm a folklorist. My whole training is to take a thing like that and set it next to other things like it and find the pattern, write down who and when and where, and make it knowledge.
and I can do that with other people's. I've a notebook full of other people's. I can hold them at arm's length and turn them in the light. Mine, I can't. I've tried. It doesn't reach. I don't know whose voice it was, because it wasn't anyone's. It only sounded like someone's. I don't know what would have happened if I'd answered, though I know, the way you know the stove, that it would have been the last thing I did. I don't know why the road let me out. I don't know the most important thing, which is whether I was right not to answer, or whether I only survived, which is not the same as being right. That's not a satisfying place to leave it, I know. I've had a long time to find a better ending, and there isn't one. There's just the not knowing, and a man my age, talking to you in the dark, who decided a long time ago that the not knowing was at least worth keeping somebody company with. So, if you're driving tonight, and you're out past Greyford on the county roads with your window down because it's finally warm enough, and somebody calls your name from the trees, and it sounds like someone you know, you keep driving, even if it sounds like someone you'd give anything to have call you again, especially then. This is Field Notes, WGRY 91.3. I'll be here till 4, with the lights low and the door shut and the static for company, the way I always am. Stay in where it's warm. I'll talk to you tomorrow night.